Our next speaker, Jennifer Conley, Executive Director of the Australian Advanced Manufacturing Council.
Hello everyone. I'm a bit worried that I'm the only woman speaking today, and representing my gender. Maybe I hope I, do it well. So thank you for the opportunity, and it's a great pleasure to be here. As Stephen said, I think we have a lot of challenges in Australia, and I think Chris identified a few as well, and so many of the speakers have said we have a lot of issues here. One of the things perhaps I'm going to deliver a little differently is I'm going to talk about some of the good things we have, and we can make the most of and we can do better with. So one of my members recently commented that Australia, in the context of innovation and advanced manufacturing, is just a late starter. And it's something to think about. When Germany developed the automotive sector, that was in the 1870s. They're considered to be the originators of the automotive manufacturing engineering. At that time, Australia was in the grip of gold fever. We had only been a nation, or we hadn't even been a nation. We were less than 90 years since the first fleet arrived in Botany Bay. So that interests me. If I can think of us as a late starter, we're not so bad. We may be like Einstein, you could argue, who didn't utter a word until he was 4. So in terms of today's discussion, I think that's important. In the context, again, of innovation and advanced manufacturing, which is the group I represent, the Australian Advanced Manufacturing Council, we do face a number of challenges, and people have identified a lot of those today. But we have some particular advantages. This graph shows you one of the big challenges that I think Sam Buchloh pointed to, where as you can see, we're the lowest in the OECD. We're the far right, where we are the smallest little corner there in terms of collaborating on innovation with higher education and public research institutions. So that is just one statistic that is fairly damning. You may have heard this. In terms, that was in 2013. But perhaps the more damning figure is this one. The Global Innovation Index 2013 found Australia was 116th out of 142 countries in terms of converting our world-class research into commercial dollars. I'm intrigued by this. While it's an appalling statistic, what this tells you in a backhand sort of way is that we actually have world-class research. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's such a bad thing. We are complex problem solvers. And again, Sam Buchloh mentioned that we are complex problem solvers. We've got a OECD statistic that found us as second in the world, just behind Norway. And we're ahead of Japan, Germany, the UK, the USA, and South Korea, just to name the top 5. Manufacturing, we know, in Australia is critical, manufacturing in the world is critical to a sustainable and prosperous economy. A country that loses its manufacturing eventually loses the power to innovate. You will have seen negative headlines everywhere about Australia's manufacturing sector. It's in decline, it's, doesn't employ enough people anymore. It's still employing nearly 1 million people, by the way, but we're not alone in the world in this. There are a number of economies around the world struggling, and the US is having a recovery, and I know that Germany's still a powerhouse, but there have been sort of blips in the recent past. We probably should understand in Australia that we do have, despite these sort of big headline numbers, we do have very consistently successful advanced manufacturing companies. And they don't fit into that sort of conversation that the media tends to focus on, because they are succeeding, and while the macro numbers show a bit of a decline, or a serious decline if you like, we do have very successful companies. Some of them I'm going to just run through here quickly. We've got Cochlear, you probably know, the bionic ear maker. They recently announced a record jump of 32% in their profits. They employ 1,300 people in Australia and 1,300 people overseas. They export to over 100 countries. Around 3% of Cochlear's revenue is earned in Australia. And yet 75% of their revenue, 75% of their taxes are paid in Australia. This company, Anatomics, is a small enterprise in Melbourne. It's been in the news recently with breakthrough technology in 3D printed body parts. They put this sternum into a man who had suffered cancer. Morand Engineering is a company that used to be focused on the auto sector. 10 years ago, they made a decision to diversify into becoming a global supplier in rail and defence, mining as well. Carbon Revolution, which is quite a small company in Geelong, developed in cooperation with the research community a process which enables it to make carbon fibre at a fraction of the cost. They're now suppliers to the world Ford vehicle market, and CSL is another company. I'll just run through Cook Medical. What I wanted to talk about though, and since many of you are obviously technology gurus, and this conversation won't be a surprise to you, but the changes occurring globally as part of the fourth industrial revolution impact directly on Australia's global competitiveness. The McKinsey Global Institute recently identified 12 disruptive technologies that are likely to be game changers between now and 2025. Some of these are already in use in the world, but it's the speed, scope and increasing affordability of these things which will have the greatest impact. This slide shows you CDC 76,000 or 7600, I'm sorry, it's a computer term, you're probably very familiar with it. For anyone a little tempted to play down the impact of new technologies and their enormous improvements over time, it's worth sharing the price of the fastest computer in 1975, which you can see on this slide. It was considered the world's fastest computer from 1969 to 1975, and it cost the equivalent of $32 million. A computer with the comparable power of an iPhone today. So $32 million in 1975. So we're looking at, this is McKinsey, I don't know if you can read that, but McKinsey identified these 12 disruptive technologies, which include advanced material science, automation of knowledge work, the Internet of Things, advanced robotics, among others. These incorporate artificial intelligence, machine learning, voice recognition technology, sophisticated analytics tools that can be used to augment the talents of skilled workers and so on. So these developments can be very positive. Indeed, many for Australia, living as we do at the bottom of the world, if you like, will make the tyranny of distance a non-issue. Austrade tells us that Australia is already engaged in all of these. For example, R&D institutions and companies undertake world-class research and innovation in aluminium, magnesium and titanium alloys, and we have strengths, as I think you've heard today, in sensor technologies in our mining sector and in big data developments in our financial services and defence sectors. We need to migrate a lot of those over to our other sectors, particularly in the advanced manufacturing area. But if we're Einstein, if you like, on the cusp of speaking, what are we doing to encourage it? What are we doing to encourage our advanced manufacturing technology adoption and adaptation, and the promotion of the skills needed and connecting research more closely with industry and vice versa? Being a world leader in your field is vital, and being considered that being connected globally is absolutely vital. You can see on this slide that advanced manufacturers are among the biggest investors in research and development. These are just the five key growth sectors that the Australian government has identified. The blue line is ordinary industry, if you like, the rest of industry. So the R&D investment of advanced manufacturers is enormous. They don't fit neatly into a sector. They work in food processing, agribusiness, mining equipment and technology, in a range of engineering applications, in precision instruments, in cyber technologies, in defence, aerospace, transport, medical devices, blood plasma therapies, advanced materials, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, you could go on. This chart just gives you a sense of why it's an important sector. They leverage the latest in thinking, in technology and materials. They produce for a global market, and they're more likely to hold a higher proportion of intangible and knowledge-based assets. The Council, the Australian Advanced Manufacturing Council, came together in 2013 as a group of CEOs of advanced manufacturers wanting to improve the national understanding of what advanced manufacturing is and what the opportunity is for Australia and what the imperatives are. These are some of the things that Goran Ruse has identified as the sector's kind of biggest reasons why we need it. So it's a bigger spender of, I said, research and innovation, and the spillover effects into the rest of the economy. It's a key driver of productivity improvement, critical for export earnings, largest driver of high-value services, and generates jobs and growth beyond its sort of what other industries do. In 2014, we were grateful that some of the Council's admonitions to government, which is one of the areas that we do get involved in, was heard in Canberra, and the federal government's industry innovation and competitiveness agenda included advanced manufacturing in its initial 5 growth centres. These are the 5 you will have heard of, I'm sure. The follow-up, which some of you have talked about and obviously are not terribly impressed with at the moment, but I would argue that there is a great lot of work being done, and as Stephen Durkin mentioned, pardon me, the Prime Minister for the first time has an understanding of what this sector is and what the needs are, including STEM education and the vital sort of parts that government can play in promoting these things, tax reform, other issues. This the follow-up, agenda included cybersecurity in that original 5. So now there's 6 growth centres, which we're hoping will help the neonatal end of Australia's capabilities, so technology development and in advanced manufacturing, in skills, in adoption and adaptation, will be given support. One of the things the AAMC has been keen on doing is making sure that the innovation ecosystem is functioning, and there's a lot of associations doing that sort of work, as Engineers Australia is among them. We're partnered with the Australian Industry Group. There are many focused on this area of Australia's economy, making sure that there's industry research collaboration that's effective, making sure we have defence procurement policies that promote Australian know-how and growth, ensuring Industry 4.0 is fully understood, and as Stephen didn't mention, but he's involved in the Prime Minister's task force, as is the AAMC, and Siemens initiated that project. The Prime Minister's Industry 4.0 task force is focused on getting Australia connected into the world of Industry 4.0, so we are really on board with what's going on. We want to ensure our world-class inventions and ideas don't go offshore, so there's part of that is a tax sort of incentive potential. We're helping people understand what it takes to be an SME, and some of you will be SMEs that are struggling as far as getting help, but to get into the global supply chains of the world, SMEs need to have scale, and to build that scale, the government can help. Our companies must be globally competitive and they must be actively engaged in multinational supply chains because 80% of global trade occurs within these global value chains. And to do that, we need to be at the forefront of developing and using cutting-edge technologies. So thank you very much again for having me today, and I look forward to the questions.